An expert says that Donald Trump undervalued Mar-a-Lago. We know that Leticia James in the New York prosecution that's being held in Judge Engoron's courtroom says that Trump overvalued his assets and made fraudulent deals with the banks, even though the banks aren't complaining about anything. But now, since Trump is presenting his case in chief, we've got a new expert who says, no, actually, Trump did a great job. In fact, he should have said that they were worth even more. And this comes on the back of a gag order out of Judge Engoron's courtroom. Remember him and his principal law clerk, Allison Greenfield, seen here. She is presumably still helping preside over the trial, and we have some updates to attend to. We're going to start by seeing what's happening here with this valuation conversation, and this comes over from The Messenger. It says that in the Trump case, a judge is going to let a Florida real estate pro testify. This is going to be the guy who comes in to do the valuation testimony. Now, they called this guy to the stand, a couple different people. One guy's name is Lawrence Moens. Now, he claimed before the trial began that the valuation of Trump's The Winter White House was between 426 mil and 612 mil from 2011 and 2021. He says, oh, those numbers, those are too conservative. Okay, not even close. Says, I could dream up anyone from Elon Musk to Bill Gates or everyone in between that he said in a pretrial deposition. He says, kings, emperors, heads of state, people with net worths of billions of dollars. Says, I don't know how many people in the world have a net worth of 10 billion or whatever, but I think it's quite a number. And there are a lot. Now, before the trial began, Engoron rejected the reasoning as being too speculative and said that the court cannot consider this expert's affidavit. He says that they use his gut feeling and so on. And so Christopher Keese, Trump's lawyer, said no, he is the preeminent broker in Palm Beach. And on Friday, before the day's testimony started, Engoron, the judge, gave Moens another opportunity to bolster the defense case and said he could come onto the stand. Now, that is where we're going to pick up with this testimony. And for the excerpt, we're going to hop on over to Klasfeld, who is at Klasfeld Reports with the trial testimony. He says, good morning. Trump is expected to call in New York case brought by Leticia James, a real estate broker, to back up his claims about the Mar-a-Lago valuation. Now, before Lawrence, the guy we just read about, before he takes a stand, we are going to hear about this guy, John K. Shubin. He's a lawyer who's going to come in and talk about valuation. He says legal theories of land use is what he's going to talk about. So Shubin comes in, takes the stand. Your Honor, the defense calls John K. Shubin. He stands up. I do. All right, please be seated. He says, sir, can you tell us about your background? He says, yeah, I'm a lawyer, very smart, a lot of experience about the law. What questions do you have? Sir, are there any prohibitions on the use of Mar-a-Lago as a single family residence? Shubin says, no, not to my knowledge. He says, in fact, here I have the deed right here. Let me show you it. He says the precise language of the Mar-a-Lago deed says that it is a 2002 deed of development rights. You see here, it says, whereas Donald Trump and his successor in assigns, Trump is the holder of a contingent reversionary interest in the property, right? So you have a right in the property that reverts contingent upon something. Whereas the club and Trump intend to forever extinguish their right to develop or use the property for any purpose other than club use. Extinguish their right to develop the property for any other purpose than club use. So there is no prohibition on this as a single family resident. And they say, well, doesn't that say it? The defense displays an exhibit. They say this one comes from 1993. It says, but there's an exception for this, a special exception use and a preservation plan. You see this one? And this comes from 1993. Do you see that? It states the following. It says, quote, the alternative uses of Mar-a-Lago are one, continued ownership by one individual as a private residential estate at his or her sole expense. So the property gets changed a little bit, and says a retreat for government officials is another exception. A museum is another exception. A cultural and intellectual center is another division, and a subdivision with multiple single family homes, a separately owned condominiums created out of existing suites, and a private social club. Okay, so there's a big addendum. There's a big exception here, a preservation plan. Now, Klasfeld says, note, but this exhibit predates the redistricting that Mar-a-Lago used by roughly 9 years. So it's earlier. And they say, okay, we'll see where this goes. The judge takes a break and we're back. So the witness is shown another document. He said, do you see this? He says, yeah. It's a 2002 swearing off the use of the property for any other usage other than club usage. You see that? He says, yeah. This document signed by Donald Trump, a couple locations, President Mar-a-Lago, and individually in his individual capacity, Trump signs this. It says, the club and Trump for good and valuable consideration, the receipt and sufficiency which is acknowledged here in witness thereof. It says any and all their rights are foregoing to develop the property for any other usage other than club usage. We grant, bargain, sell, remise, release, convey, confirm to the extent that they've not already been transferred the usage. Now, is Trump's family lawyer Clifford Roberts asks the witness about the documents. And how does this relate to that? And they say, well, objection from Leticia. Calls for a legal conclusion. Engoron sustains that. So now, Tish's office is up, doing cross-examination of this guy. Now, he's just coming in and explaining how these documents work. And Leticia's government prosecutor, Kevin, he comes up. He says, okay, Mr. Shubin, you seem like a smart lawyer, you're a very smart guy, you know all this law stuff. Okay. How much money do you make? He says, well, my rates are $1,595 an hour. That's pretty good rate. It's a lot of super chats right there per hour, man. $1,595 there an hour for trial testimony. And he says, I charge $1,300 an hour for pretrial. Plus I get compensation for the firm, so it's expensive. How much money have you gotten for testifying here today? I don't know, 100,000, 150,000 bucks. It's a good time. Next witness. He says, well, that's a lot of money, so you must be corrupt. He says, no, I'm not corrupt. No further questions. All right, next witness. Now, Donald Trump is up, calls to the stand. Your Honor, the defense calls Lawrence Moens, the real estate broker, to the stand. He says, yeah, okay, coming up. Mr. Moens, you promise to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but God? Yes, I do. Please be seated. All right, Mr. Moens, mind if I call you Lawrence? He says, sure, love that. Tell me about your background. He says, well, I am a Florida real estate broker, man, and I'm pretty good at this. He says, I could dream up numerous billionaires like Elon and Bill Gates who want to buy Mar-a-Lago. Now, tell me about your education. He says, education? That would be brief. He says, I dropped out of high school, man. What do you do now? Well, I'm a prominent Palm Beach real estate broker, American dream. He says, well, why'd you get into real estate, Lawrence? He says, well, I'd like to quote Thomas Jefferson, my kind of guy. He says, you know, the basis of all true wealth is in the land. He says, I work very hard to sell rich people properties in Palm Beach, right? That's what I do. And he says that there is literally nobody on this planet who has sold more real estate in Palm Beach than I have, okay? They just don't exist. Man, this guy can hustle. So we continue. Now, the transcript goes on, and we're back here briefly with Moens. I work hard to sell property in Palm Beach. Now, Kevin Wallace, the government, is now up. And now he wants to voir dire the witness, meaning he wants to dig into some questions about his expertise. And Your Honor, before we continue, can we go into this? Apparently he sells properties to rich people in Palm Beach, but I've got questions about his expertise in this type of property, okay? I don't know what this guy's actually selling. So the government wants to kind of dig into him on this. Let's see if he's qualified to continue. So Kevin Wallace for Tish comes up and says, all right, Mr. Moens, do you have any experience brokering sales for like private clubs? Like you said, like real estate properties, but like what about like clubs? Like, cause this isn't a residence, this is a club. He says, no, I don't sell clubs. Well, Mar-a-Lago is a club. So Your Honor, he shouldn't be able to talk at all. The state says he should only talk about the value of private residences then, not about the club. And so the judge says, well, Moens' testimony is therefore limited to your expertise about the property valuation if it were a personal residence. Well, I'll let him come in and talk about if it were a personal residence. But the Trump's defense says we already rejected that claim. We know it's not a personal residence. We just showed you that. So it's not that. And so they're trying to get this guy kind of pinned. How qualified is he to talk about the valuation and what type of property is it? Is it a personal residence or a club? Well, I don't know if it is. He says, okay, well, I'll talk about it if it were a personal residence, no problem. So he says, first of all, it's breathtaking, okay? It's something amazing to see. You got to see it for yourself. The walls are everywhere, the ceiling, there's gold all over the place. You know, Trump, man, he says tremendous. He's not joking about it. It really is pretty tremendous there. Just come out and visit some. And so they, okay. So tell us about this. He says, well, I created a video of Mar-a-Lago. You want to see it? And he plays it. So they play this puppy in the courtroom, probably beautiful music and everything. Sweeping panoramas of the outside, inside of the property. There's a triumphant soundtrack of piano and strings. It's like a quartet. Bum, 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 opening the doors open, gold everywhere, you know, chandeliers hanging all over the place. It's gorgeous, man. It's Trump. So it's offered into evidence and it's played for the court. And Engoron's just like simmering there. He's like, oh gosh, that's pretty cool. And he looks over at his Greenfield and she's also watching this and she's looking at him like, don't you start liking Trump, okay? Don't think about that's a cool place and you want to go hang out with him. He's like, sorry, baby. He's like, back to. So they excuse the witness. He says, all right, enough of the video. Get out of here. You're making me feel weird. So the witness is out of the room. This guy gets up off the stand. And Engoron, he now has something to say. You know, okay. It looks pretty nice there. Okay, it looks pretty expensive. Maybe my $18 million comment was pretty stupid. But okay, anyways, I don't care about how cool the property is. Okay, yes, it's neat and I want to go there and live there. But this case isn't about whether the properties are overvalued. Okay, maybe it is worth $1 billion. He's looking at it like, holy crap. I don't care if it's overvalued. It's about whether Trump and other defendants used false documents. Okay, that's That's it. Whether there were false documents. He says, that's not the bottom issue for me. That's not the bottom issue for me, says Engoron. And he says, okay, so, all right, now I guess you can offer an opinion. So let's bring the witness back out. I don't care if it is worth 50 billion. He's all agitated now. So with that disclaimer, Engoron, he says, okay, bring this guy back in now that I watched this video. Offers an opinion about the property value. So Moens comes back in and they say, all right. Engoron's like, okay, fine. How much is it? Tell me how much it is. So the defense exhibits Moens' valuation. They put this up on the screen. Okay, you come back in. Nice video, by the way. It's gorgeous. Yeah. He says, yeah, I know. I told you. You have to see it. So the property shows that the estimates are much higher than Trump posted on the statement. Okay, so Trump made a bunch of statements of financial condition and gave those over to the banks, allegedly. And those banks said, well, great, we'd love to do business with you. Thank you. That's perfect collateral. Here's the loan. We'll finance that deal. Here's this property, blah, blah, blah. But what Trump apparently did is didn't value it enough. Moens says, can you tell us what your valuation was in 2011? He says, certainly. I want to go over to this box down here right there. What I did is I see that Trump valued it on his statement of financial conditions at how much is Mar-a-Lago, Mr. Moens? He says, 426 million. Wow. Now, how much did you think it was worth, Mr. Moens? 655 million. Okay. So 200 million more than what Trump said is what he valued it at. Similarly, we fast forward in 2021, Mr. Moens, can you tell us what Trump listed it at on his statement of financial condition? He says, yeah, Trump listed it at 612 million. How much was it worth? Moens says over $1 billion. Now, Klasfeld says, okay, yeah, they rejected those prior to trial, obviously, because Engoron doesn't like Trump and doesn't want to really hear any evidence in this case. And he's even said that. But what's curious here is we go to lunch and we come back for a very short final segment. And you can see here, there is quite an exchange as this comes to a close. Trump's lead lawyer, Christopher Keese, comes in after lunch, made a very lengthy request to postpone Trump's testimony until a court of appeals rules on the gag order. Your Honor, we have submitted our appeal on your unconstitutional gag, and we'd like to delay Trump's testimony because he's going to want to come in and talk about some things that the gag prohibits him from talking about. And so can you please postpone the testimony? Judge says, Leticia. She says, absolutely not. The judge says, obviously, absolutely not. No way, no how. It's a non-starter. You cannot talk about my green field. He tells Keese, he says, hey, you tried. After a slight pause, the judge says, and I gave it a deep thought as well. Hey, you tried, and I gave it a deep thought as well. No, you didn't. Trial adjourned for the day. Court goes dark on Wednesday. Eric Trump is not going to be testifying, and so they'll be back on Thursday for more testimony. We're grateful to Adam Klasfeld for his reporting on this. Make sure you follow him at Klasfeld Reports for his excerpts as he's there in the courthouse, and he'll be back, it sounds like, on Thursday for more. So that's the latest updates on the case in New York, and we see here that Mar-a-Lago is undervalued. That is good for Trump. We'll continue to cover, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and continuing to follow, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.